Hey, Sasha, thanks for joining us today. As way getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hey Brian, thanks for having me today. I don't know background myself. I'm originally from Germany. I came to the US right around when I was, I don't know, 20 years old or so. And out of necessity, went into sales and kind of always loved it.
Did you make a trip to Canada on the way? I sense a little Canadian accent there, or am I way off?
Nope, came straight to Texas
Yeah.
and went into the horse country here and learned all about quarter horses. And
What brought you to
I
the US?
It's um it's an interesting story. So I have dyslexia. I had dyslexia growing up, and the universities in Germany they're free, which is great, but they're also really kind of tough to get into, especially if you don't have quite the grades. So
And
that
all
kind
those
of
long words, right?
yes, very long words, and especially back then were no programs for that, and I really wanted to achieve something and not become a baker or a tradesman, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I had a little bit higher aspirations.
And did you learn English in Germany?
Yeah, I mean, in the school system, right? I wasn't very good. I'm like, if you would go back to my first English teachers, they would never believe that I'm now in the US and actually being reasonable successful over here. So,
And how did you get into sales?
how old or how?
How? What was the
How
mechanism or the
so
impetus?
I had to pay for college.
Unlike in
So,
Germany.
yeah, like in Germany, exactly. And it was quite expensive over here. And so I had to figure out, okay, what can I do? And the unique thing is, it was so I my mom got me into horses in Germany a little bit, and so there is quite a following in Germany for people that ride Western horses, and they buy Wrangler cowboy cut jeans and they have hats. So I decided to export all these things to Germany and sell them to the basically the Western stores that sold that. And that's how I got into like just business entrepreneurship and selling things. And man, that was kind of cool. The other guys worked at McDonald's at the college, and I went loaded up my little pickup truck, went to these companies and exported cowboy shirts.
Yeah. And do you have that kind of adventure gene?
I think so.
Yeah.
I always wanted to do something, and I love it. And if I love something, I'm all in, and I'm all after it.
Yeah. And you've had a great run at your current company.
Yeah, it's a great company. The company's pack size. We do on-demand packaging technology. Um, I started there in 2010. We were a small organization. People thought we were crazy with what we're doing, and now we're kind of the status quo. I mean, you name the top 10 online retailers, we're on their list. Either we're already working with them or we have projects slotted with them, and it's basically makes a perfectly tight fitting box on the fly for online orders. So we all probably know that
Wow.
dilemma and what that could do.
Is it a hard sell?
It's here is because I have so many people I recruit to or that want to join the company. And if you look at it and think it'd be the easiest sell on the planet, I mean, you'd be like, people are stupid not to do this. And then once you get into it, it's a little bit more complex, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're touching a lot of things. Um, in the grand scheme of things, I think now we're become so big, and the status that the complexity of the project is still there, but I think it's a much easier in because we're known, liked, and trusted, right? So
Yeah.
it sure helps.
And what was it like when you started there?
It was frustrating, and because it was, I thought, wow, I mean, this is the coolest product, the coolest technology. I'm not quite as great as everything is now, but it was people didn't see the need, right? I mean, like to have this right size box. There weren't dimensional shipping charges. And I don't know how familiar you're with kind of those topics, but
I grew
now
up
you
in this
pay kind of how
space.
big the package is, and
Yeah.
and so that weren't real big issues back then, and that has changed. And sustainability has changed, and so we had a lot of tailwinds over the years as things kept changing.
And who's the point of entry at a customer site?
The higher the better. And as always, you got to have somebody that sees that vision, because we're changing a lot of things, how things it's done. I mean, you're touching marketing, you're touching the shipping person that has
Product, everything.
everybody, and you're messing their sandbox, because the guy that runs logistics maybe already has figured out for the next 3 years how he's going to make his bonus by renegotiating UPS and FedEx, and now you're messing up this entire world by changing the profile of every box. And so I see an interesting dynamic sometimes in
I
companies once
bet.
you're
And
quite down the line.
and what have you learned along the way as far as getting these deals started, keeping them going, getting them closed?
I think you it's a true profession, right? I like to think of sales almost like being a surgeon. And I know that maybe sounds a little bit over the top and overcomplicated, but you got to know your stuff. I mean, there's a reason people in sales get paid well. It's not because it's easy. Because it's really complex. So I think you just need to understand and have a good process flow and the ability to adapt to organizations, because some organizations, they don't do very well and they don't know how to adopt this kind of technology and implement it and make a good decision around it. So you literally got to take everybody by the hand a little bit and mentor them, I think, through that process, and having an awareness about how to do that.
And what is the thing that you're bringing that they appreciate? Because it does touch everybody, and everybody's got different motives and rewards. So you got to talk to each person differently, I assume.
Yes, I think you need to understand the overall mission of the organization. That's why I like to start as high as possible, right? I'm like, if you have access through board members or the C-suite, I think you have a big plus, because they have a certain vision they want to accomplish. Often, once you have those interviews and conversations there, if you get there and you're lucky enough to have that, that story may changes quite a bit once you go talk to different people in the organization. Says, yeah, Bob always wanted this, but like this is the reality we're dealing with here.
Right.
And then you got to really just bring them together and meet everybody where they are. And what served me quite well, or what I liked over the years, and now I'm the guy with the gray hair, right? Is taking, maybe mid-level managers or even directors, and the privilege we have as salespeople, and I think we underestimate that we get to look into these companies pretty deep every single day, which is awesome. I love that, because I get to see a lot of things, learn a lot of things, and so I can bring a lot of wisdom to a client. And even building that rapport with that management team and those senior stakeholders, I think you can mentor them. And I think once they kind of trust you, to like, what's the next step for your career within this organization, and how can we make sure this project actually really accomplishes that to get you the next level? And then we have a gift that keeps on giving on, okay, and once people see that you really have them at the center of it, you build some great champions, I think.
Is this something that you developed over the time there, or is this something that somebody taught you or you observed?
I think a lot of it is observation. We have to say, Packsize has been fantastic at spending, I think, a good amount of money on training the sales team. And I've been very impressed very early in the game. When I started, I think we had 30 people. This is 14 years ago, right? And that's not sales, that was the entire company. It's 30 people. But they made a very significant investment in sales training. And that was the first time I really had structured sales training. It was Mastering the Complex Sale was like a thick book, and they'd done that for us. And it was fascinating to me, because I thought I kind of knew something, but I didn't.
Right.
So,
And are you surprised today when you talk to other salespeople who don't understand it?
not anymore. Just because we kind of always think that, and then we have some success. I mean, before I came to Packsize, I was running international sales for 6-7 years for a company, right? And it was successful. I mean, every year a strong year-over-year growth, and you kind of think you're good,
Yeah.
and then until you learn you're not. You're just maybe lucky, or you're a good product.
And
And I
when you first
see
started
that.
there, did you just try and go and talk to shipping and receiving or product managers or?
Yes, so I did it all, and I appreciate that. I mean, not that I loved it, but I would, yeah, sometimes I would go into industrial parks and look for the big UPS trailers, and yeah, I mean, it sucks. It's not glorious, but it helped me because I figured out the game. I spent time with them. I took them to lunch. I figured out what's their issue. Eventually, kind of with what we do, we learned we really got to get higher up in the organization because we're touching so many things that it involves it. And the shipping manager just doesn't have the pull to
No.
get it, even get you there, right? I mean, they're just afraid to even take you up. It's like, no, I got to talk to your leader. You got to take me there.
Yeah.
It's like, and they just, it's not the right. I think it's so critical the angle you enter a company. So when I look back, all these deals, is what is that story, and what is that angle you penetrate initially the company, and what bedside manners are you doing that? And I found that if you go in quite high, maybe the board, and you really are respectful and you just navigate it well, I think that's deeply appreciated.
Yeah. And what makes you good at this? I mean, because you seem to be, you really study the game. You had that
I
surgeon
think so.
analogy.
I think so. But and I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure it out, right? And I think I'm good. I think there's people that are way better than me, and what I try to do is figure out why are they way better and what do they do different. And I think
Yeah.
that's the if I look who is really successful in our organization or outside our organization, if I see sales leaders that are just or individual contributors that are really killing it, they never stop. They're always okay, what is somebody else doing better? Where am I missing it? And one thing that I like to do with my team or when we're out is to debrief after these
Yeah.
meetings because and I
Absolutely.
was shocked that many people didn't really do that. And it's like, okay, what went well? What could have gone better? Where do we really need to improve on? And I think it helps. It helps me, even so I'm often the most senior guy in that conversation. But it really helps me to recap it too. It says, man, I messed up on that.
Yeah. Because a lot of people just glaze over that. They can't separate the performance from the performer.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. Maybe it's laziness sometimes. It's just wanting to move on, and
The next
that
one.
that's what it is, right? And
And what part or what sales characteristic do you feel is your strongest?
I think I think building the rapport with the customer, this trust that way you can. There is trust. They give you the bad news. They don't just ghost you. Still happens every once in a while to the best of us, I think.
Yeah.
But building that rapport and the customer really knowing that you really have their best in interest. And I think once you can really bring that across, I think you have something special. And the answer may be no, but 6 months from now, or people move. I've been in this long enough now. I get a lot of business because people move. They, it wasn't a fit there. They call me and say, man, that engagement was awesome. I get that very regularly that they, even so, for whatever reason, we didn't go this direction. We really appreciate the engagement, the professionalism. And I think that's awesome. That's an awesome compliment.
And how do you do that? Because a lot of people think it's talking about sports or weather.
I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, is this taking the client, the customer by the hand as a trusted advisor, right? This classic trusted advisor role for not just the business, which I mean that's what we got to do, but for them personally, how this because any project or anything getting signed, somebody has somewhat their interest in mind in it. Either they want a promotion, they want to keep their job, they whatever it is, right? And really understanding that well, and then by taking that even 2 or 3 steps further, and say, hey, what's the next step for you there? Or hey, let me introduce you to XYZ. I think you guys really are a good match. And I think not a lot of salespeople maybe go that extra step to really build that connection.
I think they only want to do it once they get the order. Right? Or they,
But the customer feels it. It's transaction, right? So
yes.
now it's and now you have this, and I catch myself sometimes doing that as well, particularly when I don't like necessarily where I'm sitting with my numbers at a certain point.
Pressure.
So if I way past my numbers, my quota where things need to be, I way relax way more, and it becomes but once let's say it gets tight, right? It's like, man, that quarter we that deal pushed, and that's sometimes when we get more transactional, or at least that what I and it shows up very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just a different part of your brain takes over. It's like necessity versus, cerebral analysis of the deal.
Yeah, yeah.
And how did you kind of discover the top-down approach? Did somebody, was that from training or was it from a peer or was it just frustrated trying to do it bottom up?
Yeah, I tell you, that was quite a bit of frustration in that process. I mean, because it's, um, I think I always enjoyed networking for some reason. Actually, I enjoyed it, right? I'm an extrovert. My wife is an introvert, and so it's seeing these differences. But I always enjoyed networking, helping people, having conversations, learning something, deep curiosity. And I think I had the ability at some point to really connect with these senior stakeholders. And at a whatever networking event, wherever, figure out where they're at, and then not have a pushy approach to it, to just build that conversation first. And this is what we do. And if timing is right, we'd love to talk to the right people and on your side. And as soon as they know you're not going to be the bull in the pint china shop, because all of these people been burnt by letting a sales guy in that ruined it for all the rest of us, right?
It's like letting a stray dog in the house, right? Dog's so cute.
Yeah, that is you know,
And for the people listening, what do senior executives want to talk about?
usually they themselves or their the goals for their organization.
It's
They
not
have
boxes.
they have zero interest about like I'm a feeds and speeds or why. So you got to find the balance, right? And I have it so many times. I show up to these meetings. It's like, oh yeah, put your presentation on this, and I I'm like something like, hey, we're kind of we're not really this kind of presentation company. It's a little controversial too, but like I sometimes go to these meetings and all these people, and I sure that have something to not totally awkward. I just want to have a conversation and understand what's going on and why do you guys are even considering this? And then we can look at my sexy machines and all. And I think people like that. It's really refreshing because they're so used to, all right, now we sit through this presentation and no
Yeah.
action. And so I love that.
Because it is awkward for a few minutes because they're expecting to just sit back, a little entertainment, a little education, and then tell you we'll be in touch, right?
And I think that's where the difference is between the guys that actually, log their FaceTime and it's like, oh yeah, we had the meeting, we went through the motion. And if you look like a salesperson, I think the one thing is if you look and walk and quack like a salesperson, you get treated like one.
Yes.
And so I always try to just like, okay, how can I look absolutely the opposite of being a salesperson? And I think that that's when I get the best traction.
Yeah. I always felt the best compliment I could get after a meeting is I'd be there with an engineer and they go, who's the salesperson?
Yeah, yeah.
Because let's face it, boxes are probably not the top of the CEO's priority list when you meet them.
It's not, and that's where we have to. It's even the smallest spend bucket usually in the distribution center, right? I'm like, but hey, your $10 million logistics spend. Let's maybe have a conversation about that, or about your parent company in Germany that has deeply cares about CO2 emissions, and with our technology, we can reduce that by 30, 40%.
There you go.
And now all of a sudden, it's like and the board just like grilled him 4 times that he's behind on his numbers, and then maybe kicked out of some of these mutual funds. So that's why having these conversations, understand the CEOs, he is worried about that he maybe, if it's a public company, if he doesn't meet some of these CO2 objectives, there is certain funds, especially in Europe, that retirement funds that says, hey, companies that don't meet this, we're going to kick them out of our funds. And now we're talking about the stock price being, and once you can talk that language versus convincing the guy at the shipping dock that your box is better. So I think it's that secret sauce that you can have both conversations, right? You can have that
It is.
conversation on the board level, and the guy goes, "Man, this guy kind of knows his stuff," right? And the shipping guy goes, "Man, he knows his stuff. He knows what I have to deal with." And once you can herd all them together, then I think you got a winning proposition.
Now, when most people hear extrovert, they don't hear great listener, great communicator. They kind of maybe the life of the party. What's your view of an extrovert?
I think unfortunately I had to learn that listening part
Did
quite a
you?
bit. That was a long lesson, and it took quite a while. I mean, even for the organization itself, so we had a lot of like Arbinger training and things like that to
Yep.
really. But if you want to be good and have a good sales guy and have success in sales, you got to be a good listener. You that's that's the secret sauce, and
Well,
so
I mean, our primal need is to be understood. And
yeah,
we're not going to be understood by hearing somebody else tell us about a product.
that's it. And that I think once I understood that, things really flowed and changed. So and I think there's still many salespeople that don't understand that.
No, it's like
And
I've got to get my 4 points in, otherwise I'm not going to get the deal.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
was the company supportive of this strategy, or did they say, well, let's give it a week or two and see how it works?
No, I think that the company has been wonderful. I think this is one. I'm fortunate to be part of. I think one of the best run sales organizations I think in the country. Because I know other salespeople. How we support the salespeople and leadership is supporting the sales team at pack size is phenomenal. And we get that when we onboard new salespeople, they go like, wow. Because I think they understood it. They understood it from when I started 14 years ago, this tiny company, and they wrote a check, I think, over $100,000 for sales training that year. And yeah, and then like, okay, wow. And they understood that pays the dividends. If you have a top-notch sales team that goes to market, that's that's the ticket. And so I've been very blessed here.
So you have the great conversation with the C-suite or the board. How do you keep the deal moving?
You not always easy because I'm gonna it gets derailed, right? Or you go
Yeah.
all the way through, and so you try to. I think you keep the finger on the pulse on what's going on, how are things shifting. You check in because sometimes I think what happens is they already took a turn somewhere else,
Yeah.
different initiative, different, oh, and M&A is coming up, or and you're still in your deal thinking to get it done, and that thing has already just like.
Yep.
So I think just staying up with the stakeholders and asking the questions, hey, are we still on track? And if not, always make it easy to give them an out. We call it something like going for the no. So like going for the no is, hey, maybe right now is not the right time for this. Right now, all of a sudden they're like, these people are perfectly willing to go somewhere else. I think that's the key is to make it very easy for them to say, no, it's not the right time. Instead of you wasting countless hours and dollars flying to places that you don't need to be visiting.
And in these deals, who typically is the decision maker or the champion, the person who says, we've got to do this? Not that, because I think everyone
It's
would think it's a good idea, but there's a big space between good idea and deal.
that is right. It's different. it's different drivers with different companies. I mean, you can say kind of it's the COO is at some point they get it. Sometimes purchasing is driving it, right? We're always like, oh, purchasing, we don't want to go there. We don't, and sometimes purchasing, depending on what industry or so, is sometimes the easiest run for me because I get the right person there. They say, wow, I have a $10 million budget on this line item, and I think I can reduce that by 20% like that. So you're going to get the meeting maybe, right? So,
Yeah.
or probably you're going to get the meeting. And if they're the right guy, they can push you because they usually purchasing's been there for a while. They don't usually tend to move
Right.
around as
It's a
quickly.
lifer job.
So, and if you can get them, if you, I had some great large organizations that, with plants all over the US where I made a great connection there, great trust. Then we ran the numbers. Then I said, hey, the numbers are really awesome, right? Let's dial them back even just a little bit, right? And so I'm the one dialing these deals back, right? And then clockwork. I mean, they would buy a new company and like the ink is dry. I'm on a plane with exact their numbers, right? I don't be guessing and bidding. They're like, we like this guy, we trust him. Can you fly out? We just bought that company, figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's where you want to be, right? Ultimately.
And what do you wish you learned 13 years ago that you really have nailed today?
I don't know if I have it nailed, but I think I'm still a student. Um, truly
Yeah.
listening.
It's hard, isn't it?
It sure is. It is.
It is. Especially when your income, all this effort, you want to talk.
Yeah, and I'm trying as good as I can. I have to remind myself is like, okay, it's you gotta take it in, and what else could this mean? And then once you start doing that for a while, you become a little bit calmer, and I learned great things from that.
And how did you develop the patience to stick with these long, large deals within large companies?
I think it's a very good point because it is mind blowing sometimes. I look at some of these deals and they're like sometimes 2 years, 3 years sales cycles, which you think, I mean, and when you talk, when you sit in these great meetings and going through like deals shouldn't take 3 years, but sometimes they do.
It's
And
change. You're selling
um,
change mostly.
yeah, and sometimes they go super quick. I'm like for us, and sometimes they take forever, and then you're almost there, and then the darn thing falls off the wagon again, and you gotta what got me to stick with it is that I've been now long enough here, and there's a great thing to be said if you're in an organization long enough that you see things come back around.
Yeah.
So if you leave a great, awesome engagement, you known, liked, and trusted, right? So you may have it run, turned it into dry run, didn't work, but the stakeholders have like, really respected the process, the insights you brought. Often you get a chance the second time around, said, hey, we really appreciate you sticking with us. And that's what gets me there because I know, well, maybe not this year, but next year there's a good chance that this thing's going to come around.
And I'm sensing that your prospects want to talk with you, not just have to talk with you.
That yes, I think by the nature of the product we developed and the marketing effort around it, the competitors that have implemented this, so it becomes a much easier conversation. Still not super easy,
Right.
but it's at the right level. It's like, here's what we do, right? We reduce CO2, reduce your packaging, reduce the shipping. You're going to get the elevator pitch. And if you build the rapport there and really listen to what they really want to accomplish, because it's probably they're not even thinking about shipping costs, and they're not thinking about shipping costs or whatever, then you keep talking about that, you're done. So figure out what they want to do and how you help them to get there.
Yeah. And what advice do you give to reps that come to you? Because I'm sure they look at you and you're 13 years, you got a track record. It probably looks easy to you, and it's probably they're saying, well, it's because of your network or some other characteristic.
I love working because every time I mentor somebody or work with them, I learn something too. Like just out of these debriefs, right? Because now I'm really doing it. It's okay, I got to mentor this person, or um, I think it's taking a clear seat on the customer side of the table. I think, or at least really getting that in their head, because
Yes.
most junior sales guys are so on their side. I got to mend numbers. I'm behind. I got to do this. Oh, we were supposed to present this new product, this new software that we just launched, and whoever launches this gets this extra whatever, gets their name on the board, and they're on their head on all their stuff. It's like, okay, and having these debriefs on. So what do you think? What do you think the customer wanted to get out of the meeting? What do you think they got out of the meeting? What do you think they may didn't get out of the meeting? They would have wished they got out. This. I think that's the biggest secret sauce, right? This listening we just talked about, and getting them to really see the
Great.
customer.
Great. Hey, appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
LinkedIn, I think it's the greatest platform. Love it. And so just look me up on LinkedIn. Be glad to connect.